Hello and welcome. It is the 6 o'clock club. It is Friday. I know it says Thursday here because um, I'm not particularly up on it. I am so having tech problems, but it says Friday now. No one will notice. We've actually got sound, hopefully, at the start rather than a few minutes into it. We've got Michael, who has very kindly joined us. And I will call up our twisted narrative logo as well, because I can if I can find it. One of the great things about the 6 o'clock club is we cover so many different things. I've got various things, lists and lists of them to show people, and I need to get it organised a little bit more. So first and foremost, welcome, Michael. Thank you very much for jumping in to keep me company. It's always nicer to have someone to chat to rather than for me to seem to be, you know, trying to repeat myself. These are not scripted videos, so I just tend to ramble on when I'm by myself. At least having someone kind of can rein that in. How are you? How was your day?
Wasn't too bad. Um, Students back on Monday for their final 3 weeks before exams. So Ryan off back to uni on Sunday, his final 3 weeks as well. So yeah, back
Yeah,
to it for a bit, and then exams start, and then exam marking and exam boards, and end of another year.
awesome. It's looking like we've got some people in chat. Um, Chat, please do this experiment with me. Um, I'm going to try, I'm going to try, or this might this might make the video feed. Let me see if I can do that. Right, and then I'm going to do that. Has that caused any kind of issues with the video feed? It's going to probably cause issues in about 60 seconds. So I'll quickly say hi, Elsa. Hi, Kyle. Hi, Matt. Hi, Cara. Hi, Michael. You're in chat as well. Thank you very, very much, everybody. Um, Elsa did that wonderful twisted narrative thing, but I'm I've got I've got quite possibly about 13 different screens open at the moment, just kind of seeing whether the video, whether I can stream from Discord and have other access to other bits of information, which is going to be critical for what I'm doing. I think I might have solved it. It's not the best fix, but it is a fix. So I'm very happy. Thank you very much for testing, and thank you for joining us on this Friday night, Friday the 14th. We are halfway through April. Um, yeah, it's very
Where did that
interesting.
go?
Yeah, well, exactly. I mean, I suppose halfway is that, but just like you said, um, I've got one of my children are at university, or rather, are back from university. We'll be heading back sort of next weekish, so it's kind of Easter has thrown a lot of my routine out of the way. I've had a lot of people go away on holiday, which means I've not ran as many games. It feels I'm feeling a little discombobulated at the moment. I'm not sure exactly where I am, what is going on, and anything else, to be honest. And I'm hoping it'll settle down. I know in reality it's not, because I think in about 2 weeks we've got another bank holiday, and then we've got another bank holiday after that bank
Yeah,
holiday for the coronation, and then at the end of the month we've got another bank holiday. So um, I'm fixated on that and whether I should run daytime games in bank holiday. I'm really keen to do a charity event at some point, and a bank holiday Monday seems ideal for that, even though it's technically my day off. Um, so yeah, I'm just venting at the moment because I've got 6 people watching, so I might as well. The good news is Michael knows this as well because we had a private chat last week is our poor cat, Willow Cat. Some of you have seen Willow Cat on the street. Was close to death. I mean, seriously, this we were really upset, and we have absolutely no idea what happened. She just recovered overnight. I mean, we took her to the vets. She was sort of having kind of spasms and twitches. The vet said, "I've never seen anything like this. You're going to have to um, take her to a specialist, get her seen." And this was over the bank holiday, so we couldn't do it for like 4 days. And it got to the point on Thursday night that I don't think she's going to make it. We might have to have her put down because the specialist was purely an investigation, um, and we don't, even then there might not be be an answer. So this was very horrific for both of us. We were fairly traumatized by it all, and we don't know. We just basically kind of lifted up. She went and slept with us that night. Normally she's a right pain in the bottom, waking us up at 4 o'clock in the morning. Um, so we normally get her to sleep in the kitchen. Uh, but the following morning, she just got up and looked at us as if there was nothing that was wrong. And we think she might have been into the garden and either rubbed against a herb or not a herb, some kind of poisonous plant, or ate some kind of, I don't know, rat poison, ant poison, I don't know. There's all sorts of things that go out this time of year. And she had poisoned herself. Um, so we gave her a massive wash down, kind of, because she would be like licking her fur or whatever. And then through the rest of that day, she just got better and better and better, and she's 100% now. Um, I'm just sharing. I'm
No,
just sharing. Uh,
that's really good news.
yeah, yeah,
And it does sound like she had something in her system and was just fighting it, and
yeah, yeah,
it takes a while to get through. And the washdown meant she wasn't reintroducing it.
yeah, yeah. It was. I mean, literally. It was a bizarre thing, but it was that night that I was chatting to you about it, that she sort of recovered. Um, so good news, an Easter miracle
Mm.
at least. Anyway, that's me sharing with you. I hope you enjoyed that chat. See, everybody loves it. There's hearts and everything else. Yeah, big love to her because she's 12. She's getting on, but she's beautiful, and we love her very much. Um, but anyway, on tonight's subject. Last night's game has provoked a conversation to be had. Last night we did. I'm just going to try and can I? I'm going to try and open all of this up again. Last night it was a Thursday game. Let's call this up. There we go. Icebreakers. We had Jack. We didn't have Joe, unfortunately. Kellen, his character. Who knows where Joe is or Kellen is? He is a gnome of great temporal mystery. But we do miss him lots. M, Sarah, James, Michael, and James. I did say your name, didn't I, Michael, or did I skip that? Michael.
Yes, yes.
Yeah, yeah. And as I said last night, they were headed into the Shadowfell, and the Shadowfell is a truly nasty place. It's supposed to be a dark reflection of the real world where undead, not rampage. It's even worse than just rampaging hordes of zombies. They have kind of almost a society, and they're organized, and um, it's not so much a great place of evil. It's more a place of anxiety, paranoia, and depression. It's evil is great for characters to fight against. It's a very good um, villain to have. Um, but this is kind of almost intangible, um, and it is a terrible place. I often describe it that it's great for the characters to dip their toes into it, but if you run a game there for too long, it can get just really oppressive. Any light source is reduced by 50%. Spells function, but are always a little sort of twisted. Um, and healing kind of only really works at half efficiency as well. Um, and I don't know whether it came to a shock to all the players. The Icebreakers is a great role play game. Everybody is really friendly. All the characters get on, and it's a joyous group of them going in and trying to make the world a better place. And the opening monologue from me, kind of, I don't know. Did it set the tone, Michael?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. Um, Sorry,
It's okay. We like animals. We've just said let your what's the dog's name?
Coda.
Coda. Let Coda be part of the 6 o'clock club. Hello, Coda.
He's currently defending me from apparently the sky,
Yeah,
which is often a threat,
it is.
um, and the postman and the floor and all these unknown threats. But the opening monologue worked really well in sort of describing things. And yeah, I think the place can best be described as a place where we decided, no, we won't play rollers.
Yeah,
It's not a place for rollers. But yeah, there were just there were a number of things that sort of came to mind as you were describing it. I think one of the things, now you've described it a bit more about mechanics and things, is the short story or novella Stephen King version, Stephen King book, Langoliers,
yeah,
not the TV series, which is special in its own way, with its amazing special effects, but it's, without spoiling it, a group of people arriving in a place and it feels over.
yeah,
So they do things like they open up a can of pop and no bubbles appear for a good length of time, and they eat food and sound is muted, there's no echo, and everything like that. And I think the way you described that, and even things like when one character tore some paper and mended it, it mended, but it left a scar. And that whole feeling that it just wasn't quite working on full, without going into huge details about any mechanics or anything, it was
mhm,
able to get across that things weren't quite working, along with the travel time and things
yeah,
like that, which I think scared people more than anything else. Is we're not make there's no kineticism.
yeah,
There's no, because I agree, if you arrived in a place like this and there's a horde of undead, it wouldn't feel much different from a standard game because you'd be doing lots of fighting.
yeah,
But arriving and it's just over,
yeah,
feels over. I think that worked very well.
yeah. I very much like running sessions in it because I'm a fan of horror, and it is horrible, but it's one of the few settings that I truly out of character are concerned about because it can reflect, on people's real sort of mental health and stuff. And that is a very narrow line, which is why your session zeros are very important. Um, with this anxiety, paranoia, and sort of depression, you have to be a little bit careful that everybody in the group is okay with that. And it's kind of the way that I run it. I'm sure there are a lot of other GMs that kind of just go, oh, it's a dark realm of undead. There's monsters. It's undead. It's where Vecna hangs out, and that's totally fine. And if I had players that had lines and veils, it's very much how I would approach it as well. But I think as a storyteller, it's quite nice to take the characters out of their comfort zone. Not the players. You want the players to always be happy around the table. Um, but the characters certainly felt, I think, um, the weight of this setting. Um, and to be perfectly honest, um, you are one of the first groups, I would have to say, that have managed to make a difference already. I mean, you're a high-powered group, and quite often people do approach it with, well, where's the monster? Let's fight the monster, and that makes a difference. And death in the Shadowfell is just, well, it's just the death. What you brought was light and hope as a group, and that was glorious to see with the actions that you did. And we had the party sort of split into two. There was half the party went to investigate this ruined church in this settlement, uncovered that there was quite possibly a great evil beneath it that is slowly eroding the consecrated ground. And it's not even a direct threat at the moment. It could be months, it could be years before this thing eventually manages to escape. And I thought that was quite an interesting sort of challenge, because it's not a threat to you. You could just move on. Um, I didn't expect you as a group to just move on, but yeah, I mean, in effect, you could go, well, yeah, we're just going to head off and do the thing that we need to do here. So that was quite fun, and it was quite fun not actually having, because quite often when you see a sort of ruined church, it's like, oh, something's there and it's going to jump out and it's going to, it's a threat. Even the bats in the belfry, are they going to swarm out and attack us? And it's like, no, they're just hanging out. This is just a place. But there is a threat here. It's just not a threat for you at the moment. And then the other half of the group, we've got a barbarian with M's character Flo, and Ace is a bard as well, Jack's character. And they very cleverly did some role playing first, to determine the kind of entertainments to slowly build into them, rather than just turning up with a big smile on their faces in this place of no joy. Um, and they managed to turn the crowd and get the whole village brought. And it was quite poignant at the end, in the fact that it felt I should reward the group with that. You've brought hope back here. About the Raven Queen, perhaps. Maybe you've been sent by the Raven Queen. Maybe you really have been sent by the Raven Queen, and you as a group don't know about it at the moment. Ace has a vestige of divergence that is linked to the Raven Queen as well. But of course, in the back of my mind as a GM, and hopefully in the back of some of the players, bringing hope to these people might only be temporary.
I think you put it very well in the session. You've lit up this settlement with hope. I just want you to think about that. You've lit up this settlement with hope. And yeah, absolutely. It's temporary, and is it going to attract notice? And
Yeah,
it wasn't pulling the rug out of the success and what had been done, but it is just that
yeah.
it's appropriate to the setting, that slight bit of disquiet creeping in at the back of the head, going, yeah, we've done this, and what's out there seeing this?
Awkward.
So yeah, yeah.
No, it was great fun. Well, I certainly had fun, and I kind of thought the session was balanced, and it started off really grim, but you did manage to pull some of that sort of back, that grim feeling with your actions. I mean, how did you feel about it, as because it had a different feel to the rest of the Icebreakers game.
Yeah, I mean, I was thinking about it just now, and all tables are very different, and I'm not doing direct comparisons, but considering Critical Role has been to the same place,
Yeah,
thinking back to what they did there, and then what they maybe did when they went to uh, the Five Hells in the first campaign,
yeah,
and were hiding I couldn't really tell the difference between those two locations. That's nothing against Critical Role. Goodness sake, I'm not going to. But what was in yours, and this isn't just being nice because you're sort of, I'm talking to you, but it actually felt different. It actually felt different from, say, Isle Cross or somewhere else where we've had
Yeah,
a fight or whatever. Whereas in televised, if you want, the YouTube version, yes,
yeah,
there were huge creatures with wings flying overhead, and yes, there were huge amounts of undead marching. But you didn't get that sense of hopelessness. You didn't get that sense of drudgery with the description of the type of food they were having, with the responses from them, which were very different from, say, NPCs in a tavern in another part of um, another area that we'd been to.
yeah,
Um, and even when they did get turned around, they were happy. They weren't ecstatically happy. It was still a muted happy. It was very different from what was there before.
yeah,
So much as I love Critical Role, I think yours had more flavour, and that's generally not buttering you up. It is thinking back objectively. I those encounters in Hell and in where they were going for Vecna, no
yeah,
spoilers. You could have swapped those, and there wouldn't have noticeably been a difference apart from the type of monsters there.
yeah,
There wasn't a real sense of difference. Whereas here, considering there were no fights, it was largely travel and the growing realization that travel wasn't working how travel should work. So people's expectations were different, and I think that makes people very uncertain.
yeah,
And it's 10 miles. Oh, cool. Hang on, that's so we'll be there in 4 hours. 4 hours later, it doesn't appear you got any closer. People
yeah,
get very if you give them uncertainty. Um, in
yeah,
an interview, John Carpenter was talking about this. As soon as you give people uncertainty, whether it's who to trust, whether it's what the rules are here,
yeah,
people start getting, well, I can't just put my shield on and get extra AC and hit. I don't know how to handle this.
yeah,
Is our dome even going to work? But if the
yeah,
tree doesn't, that there was a lot of discussion in character. And I think partly not trying things was characters didn't really want to know because then they'd know that, oh, tree magic doesn't work here,
yeah,
or magic doesn't work fully. And I think that was really interesting afterwards to think about. Yeah, we really didn't use any resources.
yeah.
Was that because we were terrified that we might not get these back? We don't know the rules. We don't know how to sort of manage this. So yeah, it was a very interesting feel.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of uncertainty. Hiya, Jack. By the way, Jack is just we're talking about last night's Icebreakers game. Just so you know, it's quite funny really because speaking of John Carpenter, I'm obviously a big fan. I think we've established that now in the many conversations you and me have had. And I don't want anybody to sort of take this the wrong way. The fact that I've been researching the movie The Thing, and I'm running a space sci-fi game tomorrow night. I mean, there's no reason why those two things are connected at all. But kind of just going over a lot of information again. Um, I don't know whether it's an urban legend, but supposedly John Carpenter in The Thing, when you see one of the um, sort of station people that supposedly is infected. He basically used, and it was a shadowy figure that moved. He used actually a stuntman to do that.
Yeah,
So none of the actors or the crew or anybody else knew exactly which one was infected. And
yeah,
he is in round tables have actually said, to be honest, I'm not actually sure. I wanted to keep it so ambiguous so that everybody was on set sort of suspicious and questioning.
yeah.
And
I'd heard the same thing, that it was deliberately that shadow actually matches none of the main actors
yeah,
because it isn't any of the main actors.
yeah,
So you can't go, oh, that's Childs or
yeah,
that's whoever. It's You have to go, well, it might be, but who do we know? Yeah,
yeah. And that's what you're saying. Of course, this is role playing, and there are people around the table. I'm not saying my players. I'm saying everybody's table is different, as you said. Some people hate uncertainty. They really they come to the table to want to know what they can do, and sometimes when their life is being disruptive and out of control. It's quite nice to get that escapism and to know exactly where you stand and everything else. And I'm
I mean,
not.
that's another John Carpenter story. Is after the first press screenings of the thing, and he came up and was talking to the people, and a teenager came up and said, at the end when you've got McCready and Childs, what happens then? And he said, well, that's really up to you. You've got to use your imagination. Apparently, the teenager said, "Oh, I hate it when they make us do that." And he was going, "Well, how can you win if your
Oh,
punter's there?"
absolutely. I mean, it's a big world. There's a lot of people with different tastes and opinions and everything else. Um, but I'm most definitely on the John Carpenter sort of side of the fence with that kind of thing. But again, I'm not entirely sure, and I've kind of run Shadowfell games or part of a story arc that have had quite a few sessions, and it does. The setting, I think, has an effect upon not just the characters but also the players as well. And I think obviously part of it is how grim it is and the fact that you can do less and less things and stuff isn't working the way that you want it to, and it can be a bit grindy like that. And some of that flavour is great, but you don't want it, especially if you can't complete the thing that you're doing. So you have to. It's all very well saying, "Well, you chose to go to the Shadowfell," but if the plot has led you there and you're trying to complete something before you return, um, that is down upon the game master as well as the players. If you see that, because the game master is pacing how long it's taking, how many sessions it's going to take for them to do
Absolutely.
the thing that it is. So it's just I think, as always, it's good to have open conversations with your players, whether they're enjoying the current story arc, whether they are enjoying the setting, especially if it's a reversal of what you normally do, or if it's a change. Just have conversations. You don't have to be psychic. You don't have to be empathetic and try and work out whether they're enjoying it or not. You can say, "Are you enjoying this?" And if they're not, the whole point of playing a game is to have fun around the table. And in many ways, I really like my cooperative role playing. And if it's not for the table, then you just move the story on. Um, I don't. I mean, I suppose it's a smidgen of a spoiler here. You're going to be a few sessions in the Shadowfell, but I don't think it's going to be, particularly long sort of stint here, unless you, as a set of players, decide. Well, you know what? We can make some real differences here. Let's make our home here, and let us convert the Shadowfell to a place of hope and light. Um, I don't think that's going to happen, but who knows? It could.
Temptation to say Mantis raises her hand. No, no, please. But it because if you look at the other Thursday game, you could put a whole bunch of players in Anchorel and just leave them to poodle.
Yeah,
And they will poodle and do stuff because it's a nice, fun, sunny environment with lots of things to do and very different things in there. So you can sort of not have so big clues or not lead them directly to what. Whereas, yeah, I think the icebreakers were great. If it's, well, go find out where it is. Oh,
yeah,
it's all grey and it's all equally grey. Well, let's try this way. Um, and you sort of, I guess, you adjust your pacing to how much of that world you think the players will enjoy
yeah,
and how much they want to just get the job done and go home now, please.
yeah.
So
No, absolutely. And it did raise this question. Hiya, Skill. Thank you for jumping in. We're chatting all about how game masters can use different ways to bring a location to life. Um, so, I mean, that's not exactly what we're talking about. It is and it isn't, because it's about how can we make a setting sort of different, different from other settings. There's nothing wrong with vanilla. I quite like it as a flavour of ice cream. Um, and the reason why people call vanilla games or whatever is because it's supposed to be sort of a neutral taste, something that everybody's going to be comfortable with and everybody's going to enjoy. And I think quite a lot of if you if you kind of look at a lot of the I was going to say published D&D Adventures of Wizards of the Coast. They're kind of fairly vanilla. They've got they're not dull, they're not boring, but they designed for you to put your own sort of sauces or maple syrup or whatever else on to in effect flavour it up to your table, and that's great because you don't want to produce a product, or certainly Wizards don't want to produce a product that is very niche and is only going to sort of target one sector. It's bad business if nothing else. Um, so I suppose the question is how do I, because I can't speak for other game masters, they have their own ways of doing things, some better than me. Um, how do I take that and put a spin on it? The company name Twisted Narrative came from me wanting to always sort of twist something, always make something not necessarily what was expected. Um, it gets progressively harder and harder with players like Michael because you play in an awful lot of games. You now have a similar sort of mindset to me, and it becomes. I don't know. I suppose that's a question to you straight away. Really, is are you beginning to see what's coming next in my games?
No,
Oh,
no.
good.
Didn't know what was going to happen with the Shadowfell.
Yeah,
Didn't know whether that was going to be straight into something because there's so many, like you said. I mean, I think the description vanilla is good because you do, like you said, add sauces to it and you choose what to add. You could
yeah,
take Saltmarsh and move it into Eberron if you fancied.
yeah,
Again, the plot would be the same. You just alter some of the bad guys, or you
yeah,
could turn it into a real gothic horror and replace some of the lizardy people with more undead or whatever. So I think that's what even if you're running something that people might know, it will give complete twists to it. Um, Even down to minor things. Scorpion and the Frog. Best description of Scorpion and Frog story with a complete twist where in character and out of character, mine was going, oh God, this is cliche. Really, my mentor is giving this story. It's not even a very, oh,
yeah,
oh, you're calling it out as being absolute crap. Cool. And again, that's not a huge plot twist. It's not, oh, so you're my father. But it's something that breaks a trope
yeah,
that you think you know where this is going and it's not. And it's better for that. You're not doing it for the purpose of, oh, I'm going to tell the story differently.
yeah,
Goldilocks is going to eat the bears or whatever. It is this character would see that tale and call it out as,
yeah.
oh,
Being
people can
nonsense.
change.
Yeah,
That's an
yeah.
excuse people use. And it was perfect to the setting. So absolutely, yeah,
Oh, well, I'm
constantly.
pleased then that you haven't caught up to my because I do like um, it. I think it's very difficult to challenge in fifth edition players and characters to a degree, especially at higher levels, because just because of the way the system is, and this isn't a fault of the system, it's supposed to be heroic superhero fantasy, and it does that very, very well. But it does put a challenge on how do we make the characters feel uneasy? How do we make the characters feel scared? How do we uh, make the characters not expect something? Um, um, because firstly, you can't really fail skill checks. Secondly, your modifiers can be so high that, according to rules as written, you're getting above a 15, which is probably giving you the information that you're going to need, really. Um, So it becomes an even greater challenge to try and do that. You can obviously change the rules, and it says in the player's handbook or the GM's guide, use variant rules, change the rules to fit. But I don't kind of like doing that on the whole, especially not in one of these vanilla settings, because I think it's wrong to take that agency away from the players. The players have got the information, the players have got the books, they are building their characters for certain reasons, and you don't want to really be saying, well, no, I don't want you to do that. I think that is an easy way of doing something that you shouldn't really do, is by saying no to players all the time. What you should do is embrace what the players want to do, especially if it's rules as written, and then try and work with that to tell a good story. Obviously, when you go to different plane of existence like the Shadowfell, the gloves are off a little bit. This functions differently. There is despair. There is this different mechanic, and I didn't want to, for instance, with Sarah's character, which is a druid. When she wild shaped, I didn't want to go, well, you can't fly. You're going to fly as fast, and that would take so much away from her character. But instead, it's like, yeah, you can fly, but it's disorientating, and it feels like you're always falling, and it's making you nauseous, and it's literally not having an effect. There's no constitution rolls needed or anything else.
Yeah.
You can continue with this discomfort, but you're suffering that. And great role player as Sarah is, she went, I don't want to do that anymore. It's not very nice. Um, so
And
you
your
can.
deeply depressed plants as well.
Oh yeah, sort of the opening scene was. I'm going to
That was
speak to the plant. Yeah, it's even the plants here are miserable. And I mean, again, that was very touching, though. Being a druid and a ladrin. The plant just wanted to put out their misery, and it wasn't like a nice blooming flower. This was a piece of lichen. Um, just a really hardy plant that managed to survive. It was kind of just miserable, really. But Hazel, Sarah's character, managed to sort of remove it and kind of attach it. Sarah's playing kind of a dryady type character, so carrying this around now. I just imagined that by the end of this story arc, Hazel will be like 8 times the size, just
yeah,
with all of these
something,
plants growing
something
from a.
by the end of it,
Yeah,
as we bring refugees back.
yeah. Which again I just thought was a beautiful scene, really, but managed to get the plot across. Um, so one of the things that we kind of discussed just before we came on, it didn't really occur to me, but it does cover this topic a little bit, which is about different settings. So, as a bit of a side project, I'm doing Tales from the Smoke, which some of you might know, some of you might be unfamiliar with. And the idea is to have this city, the Smoke, which I love my urban encounters and settings. And originally, it's like this kind of Victorian-esque London, but it's fantasy, so there was fantasy races or ancestries sort of within it. And there's guilds and everything else. But it kind of occurred to me it might be quite fun to take that setting and to use it with different systems, which means the setting has got the same sort of look and feel, but sort of twisted somewhat. So we tried to do that, and we did a Call of Cthulhu in it, which is in an actual play, um, which worked. It didn't have fantasy ancestries. It was like, this is going to be Call of Cthulhu, so therefore there's no fancy races. There's mythos magic, but that's very rare and very scary. but still, many of the NPCs exist. So you have all of the guilds, you have the mercantile houses and the like, still sort of functioning. Um, then we did it with Shadowfell, and that was fantasy. Shadowfell, sorry, Shadow Dark. Fixated on the Shadowfell now, and that had fantasy races in. That's also on an actual play, but again, the same guilds, but slightly twisted to fit the setting. And in about 2 weeks' time, we're going to do Feng Shui. Now, this is going to be the first Tales from the Smoke that the city is going to be. The architecture of the city needs to be changed a little more because Feng Shui is kind of modern and futuristic, whereas Cthulhu is kind of 20s or even Gaslight, which is Victorian 1890s. Um, which is, I think, a lot closer to a steampunk fantasy feel. Um, so we're still going to have the guilds, we're still going to have the mercantile houses, or they'll probably be termed corporations now. Um, Still going to have that gothic kind of a gothic Victorian feel to it. Um, and I've had to play around with ideas to try and make that work in my head. And the closest things I can come up with for the look and feel of it is imagining a sort of Gotham from Batman crossed with the world of John Wick. So John Wick is great. When I watched the very first John Wick with the Continental as a hotel, these groups of assassins and thieves and the beggars, which is like the Bowery. Is it the Bowery King?
Harry King, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I watched it and I went, "Has people been looking at my notes again?" Because it just had that feel, and I thought the smoke could easily sort of fit into that kind of flavour. Um, Feng Shui is action movies, so John Wick is perfect for it. The Batman movies are perfect for it. It's about a shadow war, and there are futuristic warriors coming through from obviously the future. There are the Ascended, which are individuals that have got kind of animal spirit kind of links. There are ancient sorcerers from the past. It's Big Trouble in Little China to come back to John Carpenter again, mixed with John Wick and sort of cyberpunk and everything else, really. Um, so I'm very, very excited for that because I've run quite a lot of Feng Shui. I do like it as a system. I love the cinematics, but to actually kind of try and create the smoke setting for it to work as well is is going to be fun. I don't think it's going to be particularly a challenge. It's just going to be really fun to see because I mean, obviously in the Cthulhu one we had carriages. In the Tales from the Smoke Shadow Dark we had carriages. Obviously in this one we're going to have vehicles, cars and everything else. I haven't seen John Wick 4 yet, but I believe there are a number of incidents that involve lots of cars in
Yep.
combat. So
Cars are back.
and that is Feng Shui all over. It is that sort of action movie. It leans very heavily into Hong Kong action movies, Big Trouble in Little China, but it was written years ago. I think if it was rewritten now as a third edition, I think there'll be a lot of nods to John Wick because John Wick is most definitely that style of movie for it. Um, so what what I'm trying to say here, I guess, because I'm not changing the system in Tales of the Smoke at all. In fact, I'm very keen to keep the system as is. So I'm not trying to do fifth edition D&D horror with some Cthulhu mythos in, because I think that takes away both fifth edition D&D and Mythos. Whilst it might be fun for a one shot for you as your 20th level characters to call in divine sort of inspiration or commune with your gods and take down Cthulhu, which I'm fairly certain, well, let's face it, they can't, because even if 20th level characters manage to finish off Cthulhu, sort of half an hour later he's going to reform and come back and be really, really cross with you. Um, um, but I really wanted to capture the flavour of these systems. As I was saying before about vanilla, each of these systems have got a distinct flavour. Um, and I think you would lose a lot by trying to merge them together to fit the setting of the smoke. I would much rather sample the flavour of each system in the same setting. Does that make sense? I'm babbling on here.
Absolutely. And I would utterly and completely agree with you if you hadn't created a setting in fifth edition of that asylum where I genuinely was expecting it to merge into Carcosa at some point.
Uh,
So
uh,
I think it can be done when you don't have a target. There's nothing that you can spend your spell slots on. And
yeah,
I think that was very much an environment. I absolutely agree that, all some deep ones are coming out of the water. Well, we'll just do lightning bolt. And that does a disservice absolutely to both aspects.
yeah,
The ambience of the mythos and the system, because you shouldn't do that. You can go up against shark creatures and that's part of D and but
yeah, yeah,
not with the whole sort of backstory of inbreeding and the whole sort of history of that does not play well with the lightning bolt.
yeah.
But genuinely, the opening of interesting books, I was half expecting a bunch of those asylum people to be putting on a play that
Yeah,
we'd never leave.
yeah,
And I think uh, but I also absolutely agree that some systems, even just the mechanics of the systems, works better for some styles of play. Like Call of Cthulhu would not be the same without sanity loss.
yeah, yeah.
Not be
No,
the same with the genuine terror of discovering something out. And you never feel scared in fifth edition when you make an investigation check. You would, and that's the thing with high-powered characters. Oh yeah, you got plus 16 to this roll. Great, you understand completely.
yeah,
And there
yeah,
are consequences to that
yeah.
understanding.
I think also it's you know once again, if people are having fun around their table, it's not for me to say what's right and what's wrong. Um, but I think leaning into the strengths of game systems is a positive way to view them. And as I've said, fifth edition D&D is a high fantasy, heroic superhero sort of setting, and if you are using that to replicate Call of Cthulhu, the classic setting, is very much you're an everyday person that is going to uncover something horrific, and when you do, things are going to go very bad for you. There is no resolution, so kind of trying to use that in fifth edition kind of feels one of two things is going to go wrong. Either the characters are going to lose their minds, they're going to fail wisdom rolls, and they're going to go mad, and they're not going to be the superheroes the players want it to be, or that's not going to happen because they make the rolls and they battle through and they fight some of these horrors, and it doesn't feel like Cthulhu that way either. So you kind of lose one of the two sort
Yeah,
of feels. And I suppose the other question is that I genuinely believe fifth edition is quite a complex system. I mean, compared to a lot of other more modern systems, that's not to say it's bad. I think it's understandable and you can learn it relatively easily. But I think if you understand how fifth edition works, you should easily be able to pick up the the mechanics of many other sort of games. So there's nothing really to stop you dipping your toe into some other systems. If you want, what I'm trying to say is, if you're playing fifth edition D&D and you as a group decide, oh, we really want to play a horror based game, rather than try and use fifth edition to replicate that, I would very much recommend just play a game of Call of Cthulhu. It's going to be a one shot. You're probably all going to go mad or die, but you're going to get that horror. You're going to get that sort of feeling, and then once you've satisfied that taste for horror, you go back to sort of fifth edition, or you might have developed a desire to carry on with that horror based game. And I think it's very much the same with many other systems as well, especially when the systems are different settings. This isn't a sort of discussion about should I play fifth edition or Pathfinder. They're both fantasy games. They both replicate sort of fights. Both do it in different ways, and they're both great, really. And it's finding which one you prefer, you know. But if you want a horror game, try out Call of Cthulhu. There are many other sort of horror-based games out there as well by independent publishers that are worth checking out. Shiver, for one. Hi, Shiver guys. Really love your games. Cinematic, I love. Horror, I love. But if you want to play a futuristic one, try out Shadowrun or Cyberpunk. You know, rather than taking fifth edition and bolting lots of things on to make it that. If you
I
like
think
bolting lots of things on, then do it. Yeah, sorry.
I think for the player as well, it's nice to go back to that feeling you get when you're playing the game for the first time.
Yeah,
With the best will in the world, okay, you're going to play a horror game. I want you to create a 10th level character. You're going to be thinking about what's the best or most useful build or whatever. Whereas Call of Cthulhu, completely different. You start off, am I a dilettante? What the heck's a dilettante?
yeah,
Okay. I've got what? That's high? It's like playing Warhammer. Again, I've got a 30% chance to hit, and that's good.
yeah,
Okay. I've got to have spell components that are really expensive and might get me killed by even owning them. It's that feeling of starting afresh when you're not jaded with a game, but you kind of know the mechanics.
yeah,
And I do agree. Once you kind of know the mechanics, you know sort of what you want to play with, what you want to do to either challenge yourself or have something that you know is going to be good at something. If you go to a completely different system, you get to read the descriptions rather than going, oh yeah, third level monk, that'll pick me up this, fifth level this, that'll pick me up in twice or whatever. It's right. What are these classes for this cyberpunk game?
yeah,
That sounds interesting. I've no idea what it does. And you're going back to doing things because of the descriptions,
yeah,
because of, oh, right, hacker, I don't know, but I'll try that. And it takes you out of, even if you're not trying to do it, it takes you out of that sort of feeling of you kind of know what you're going to get if you put A and B together, as opposed to,
yeah,
oh, a gameskeeper. I'll be a gamekeeper.
yeah.
I'll be, no,
No, no, no, absolutely. I mean, my first real uh, kind of impression of that was when Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay came out for the very first time, and I'd played by that point played Dungeons and Dragons or AD&D. I played Gamma World, which is post-apocalyptic crazy mutants. I'd played Boot Hill, which was cowboys. They were all off the same sort of system, and on the whole, it was all kind of relatively heroic fantasy, old school back in the day. And then this Warhammer Fantasy Roleplay came out, and it's like, oh, I could be a rat catcher. That is amazing. I get a stick that is sharpened to catch rats. And yeah, you have career paths. So you would start off as like a
yeah,
rat catcher, and you would learn, and then you would jump into kind of either the same an advancement career as rat catcher, or you could kind of leave that career behind and go into other ones. And it was really fun to sort of see and do. We've got a couple of comments as well. Kyle said I've been quite surprised how easy it was to step into Shadow Dark and Blades in the Dark. And Skill says just play a horror game. I mean, which is fundamentally what I'm saying. You know, if you are playing, if you want to play a horror game, that there are horror games out there. And my first point and comment on this is it doesn't need to be expensive. A lot of the bigger and some of the smaller games companies now have quick start rules. So you can literally go to their website. For instance, Call of Cthulhu, go to the Chaosium website. You can download the quick start rules for free. It gives you everything you need just to give it a flavour and a play and a taste and a go, to see whether it's for you. There are a lot then of very good starter sets out there that I know we're in a cost of living crisis, so I'm never, I hate to tell people to spend money, but if you like it, there are there are steps of options rather than having to spend lots of pounds on books really. But there's a lot of free rules out there that are legitimate, that these games companies are actively trying to promote their systems that you can get hold of. And the second thing, sorry, Michael, I'm having a go. The other thing is that a lot of these systems, even if you don't like them, they quite possibly will have one or a few really quite cool rules or ideas in them that you are totally unaware of, that you kind of go, actually, I really like that. And because it's just one small thing, um, it's easy to put into the game system that you do like and you are comfortable with. So, for instance, I'm a big fan of luck in Call of Cthulhu. It does, I mean, it allows you to roll stuff and whatever, but it's not like Lucky in Fifth Ed. What it does is that if you as a group are kind of running for a coach to see whether you can catch it, or whether you remembered to bring a certain item with you, you can just quite simply go, you know what, give us a luck roll, and you roll your percentage dice, and it's like, oh yeah, you've got it. It's just a very easy mechanic, rather than the gem either having to go, do I really want to be nasty here and go, no, you can't have it because you didn't say you were taking it, or do I want to be really lenient and go, yeah, you've got it. You can go, well, let's let the dice tell the story. And obviously, in Call of Cthulhu, some people are very lucky, so they've got higher luck stats, and other people are not so lucky and have lower sort of luck stats. Um, and for instance, in Blades in the Dark, it very much leans into the flashback sort of mechanic where you can, and it causes you to have resources and gain stress, and you still have to make dice rolls for it. But you can go, actually, previously, my character would have done this, which means that in games like Blades in the Dark, you can jump straight into the action without having, you know, the characters having a planning session of 2+ hours when they don't know all of the ins and outs of what they're going to encounter, and more importantly, what they're going to encounter will be dependent upon their dice rolls when they do that. So even the GM doesn't necessarily know what is going to happen until they start doing that encounter and the dice get rolling and things get moving forward. So flashbacks really kind of help with the pace as well. Um, yeah, we've got Michael. You've just put into this. I mean, feel free to verbalise what you just put into chat.
Oh, it was when you were talking about, I absolutely agree. I love the fact you can go to most online sites and download a little snippet of this is kind of how Call of Cthulhu works, and this is kind of how Pathfinder works. Well, a little tiny bit of it, or this is how whatever works. But the other thing, which I don't mind mentioning, even in a cash strap, Humble Bundle, it's a
Yeah,
charity, and at the moment, I think it may have just finished. You could have downloaded the entire of the Dark or Hammer role play game for 40k, dozens and dozens of books, or just a small amount of them. I mean, recently, largely because it was promoted on here, I picked up Vesson from
Yeah,
there because it looks incredibly beautiful.
yeah.
And I quite like my Slavic supernatural folklore, and I haven't looked at it yet, but I was able to pick it up at a fraction of the price and do some good. So I think there's lots of, more than ever, don't have to go, well, if I want to even see what this is like, I've got to fork out 40 quid for the core textbook, and then regrettably go, I don't like this.
Yeah.
What do
A-
I do with it now?
Absolutely, and not everything is for everybody. Cara's made a good point. Sorry, Andy, were you not doing a game at 7 o'clock? Wow, you're my guardian angel, Cara. Thank you very much. I might have you as my PA. Uh, the good news is, or the bad news, depending how it is, Michael's in that game as well, and
Oh, crap.
unfortunately, it has been postponed, which is why I'm still here. Why we're still here, sort of chatting to you. I mean, we've got 8 or so people in chat at the moment. I hope you're enjoying us babbling on about things, and I really appreciate the heads up, Cara, because as you have noticed, I am somewhat flaky these days. But no, I haven't forgotten about collateral damage. Unfortunately, we've got a few people that are away. Um, so we decided, with great sadness, I would say, to postpone it till next week. Um,
I mean, three of us were very willing to take on an undead black dragon and a recently dead T-Rex
yeah,
compared to the seven as usual. It'd be fine.
yeah,
The
yeah.
squishy centre would have done wonderfully
Uh,
without our barbarian, our AC 26
to, 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 to,
artificer. It would have been fine.
what I love about this is uh, you are three 18th level characters. You can probably take it quite easily, and this is the beauty of the collateral damage group, is they play up how sort of weak they are, but
Inept is the word you're looking
inept,
for.
yeah. But I mean, I think collateral damage would be an incredibly dull game. It's one of the reasons why fifth edition D&D doesn't really get to level 20 in a lot of campaigns. It's because you as characters you get to the point where you can do anything. I mean, literally, you can do anything, more or less. Especially rules as written with the with the monsters that are created and everything else, and the kind of the more vanilla settings, game masters have to get very much more creative at those higher levels. Transportation, shifting between planes is not a problem. The ability to use wish to create huge amounts of resources. Um, it's a superpowered game, and I just love the fact that collateral damage don't lean heavily into the fact that they are capable of doing things.
And
And it's
I think that does go back to sort of the tone in the campaign, because you've said in the past that we spent a long time in a certain asylum, which I will stop witching on about, but it was one of the most enjoyable role-playing experiences because of the setting.
yeah,
We could have taken off and nuked the site from orbit, to be frank.
yeah, but
Um, and the same happened last week or the week before in the game on Fridays, which is currently in Cult.
yeah,
And I don't know anything about the game in Cult apart from the fact that it's nice and warm, which suits my reptile fine. It's the mammals sweat to death. But we came across an enemy that we'd been asked to deal with, and everybody was really worried because this particular type of enemy, the type of enemy it is quite tricksy. I think it's fair to say.
yeah,
So we went in very carefully, expecting the absolute worst, and unloaded as much as possible. And 6 seconds later, there was a small crater. Um, because, and this is again about wrong-footing parties. I genuinely feel that the last words of that particular person would be, "Oh, so you're not sixth to 10th level then?"
yes,
as this, what would be a big boss in one encounter was murderized by half the party. I think half the other
yeah,
party would go, "Do we get a go?
yeah.
Do we
No,
know?"
no, no, you don't.
On
Um,
and that I think is the fact. You've got a party and you've got a scenario that you've created over 3 years now, where it's always taken seriously.
yeah,
It's never, oh, we'll just wander in here and kill it. It is, and I love the people who do things which end up being Oh, you're going to set fire to half the forest, are you? I believe my phrase was, do you even cantrip?
Yes.
Did you have to use fireball? Could you not have used firebolt as branches fall down around us? Which, yeah, if you were playing it absolutely straight and counting all your beans and whatever,
Yeah.
you'd do it a different way. But the barbarian wants to barbarian and jump in and gain glory for his father. And others are more sneaky and behind. And one of us has the wisdom of a clam, um, and gets us into trouble all the time. And I think that's what makes it funny, even at 18th level. It's not boring.
Yeah.
We don't just wish things away and nuke things from orbit because we're chuckleheads,
Yeah.
basically.
And it makes Friday nights very, very much fun. I am going to miss tonight's game, I have to say, but this has made up for it. It's been an absolute pleasure having a chat to you, and say it's gone from the recovery of my cat through to the Icebreakers game, through to talking about different systems, um, using those systems in different settings, well, in the same setting, so changing the setting rather than the system. So it's been fascinating, really. And sort of speaking about that, I mean, sort of finally as we move forward, is this thing Shadow Dark, Sci-Fi, and Junkers. This is tomorrow night, um, and this is me doing my normal sort of twisting stuff again. As soon as I read the rules to Shadow Dark, which I know I'm mentioning an awful lot, it's because I genuinely think it's a very neat system, and the reason why I think it's a very neat system is because it's very rules light and you can do things, and I don't think people really kind of understand. I don't know whether I'm having some kind of breakdown, which could well be a possibility. Um, but I can see so much potential in this system. And I think I can see so much potential in this system because it's not what it originally appears to be on first look. Or rather, it's so light, I can see so many other potentials in it. Um, and I'm converting the quick start rules into a sci-fi setting, but it's not a sci-fi setting that is um, completely changed. So there will be ancestries. There's going to be goblins still, orcs and elves. So it's got that it's got that feel of Shadow Dark. I mean, very much the way that 40k is really. You could easily say that 40k is 40,000 years in the future for Warhammer Fantasy Battle. Realistically, I mean, the lore is somewhat sort of muddled, going back to the emperor and everything else. Uh, but um, one of the key things is that there are no skill checks in Shadow Dark. So um, what you do is ability checks. So I haven't had to go in and go, right, I'm going to take, I don't know, Arcana and turn it into computer use, because those things don't exist. If someone wants to use a computer, you just get them to do an intelligence check instead. So you don't have to rewrite everything because there's nothing there for you to rewrite. It's almost intuitive. Um, the other thing is that everybody's gone, or I'm getting a lot of feedback of, oh, it looks really deadly. And yes, if it is a um, combat orientated game that you're running, it's incredibly. You've got maybe one hit point, but that isn't what it's designed for. It's designed, you don't get experience unless you choose to give experience for slaying monsters. You get experience for um, um, recovering sort of treasure or loot or gaining boons. So in many ways, I'm kind of looking at this as sort of a fantasy Call of Cthulhu, for instance. You don't pick up Call of Cthulhu, which we've just mentioned, talked about, and go, Oh, I've only got a few hit points. How am I ever going to fight that Shoggoth? How am I ever going to go toe to toe with, a Hound of Tindalos? And the answer is, well, you don't. You're not that you don't do that. What you want to do is find the information of how to defeat those and use that to defeat them instead. Um, so I think a lot of people that are looking at this are going, uh, I'm not going to enjoy this because I'm just going to die horribly. I can't see the point of playing a game where I'm supposed to go down a dungeon and I'm going to lose. And I don't think that is the way that's a perception that is incorrect of the way the game should be played. If you see what I mean. Has that made any sense, Michael?
Yeah, yeah, I think so. I haven't looked at it hugely because I just haven't had a chance, but I've seen some people sort of saying, "Oh, I've got my build, and I've got 2 hit points.
Yeah,
Oh, I've got 1 hit point." And yeah, that does sound scary. But to be fair, fifth edition first level is scary.
yeah,
You sneeze and you go down.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that the more the people get experience of it, the more the people see how adaptable it is. And I love the fact that yeah, no skills. How are you going to approach this? And I think it fits well into things you've done in other games where, oh, what skill would you like to use?
Yeah,
How are you going to do this? If you can convince me that your social skill in this case, or persuasion if it was D&D, will help you fix this carburettor, good luck,
uh,
but I'm willing to listen.
uh,
And just strip out all the skills, and it's an intelligence based thing, it's a strength based thing, it's a
yeah.
whatever based thing, because that's you can have training, but at the end of the day, a lot of it is sort of how dexterous you are, how strong you are.
uh, Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, there's a couple of other sort of things that I I I I, I think it's people that haven't experienced kind of the way that old style games were played, as opposed to knowing the rules to old style games, because the rules are not particularly old style. But sort of back in the day, and I have very much had to really kind of try and remember, because I used to run, as I say, these games, sort of Gamma World and Boot Hill and Top Secret, and Dungeons and Dragons, and there were not particularly any kind of real rules in there for skill checks and for doing stuff. You had stat for like bend bars, lift gates, that kind of thing, but beyond that, yeah, a thief had sort of a skill in sort of pickpockets, but there was never any kind of insight or perception or anything like that. And this leans heavily into the concept of, it kind of almost flips it. Firstly, the stats on your character are the sort of average stats of kind of a real world person. So um, the upper stats means that you're kind of intelligence of 18. You're a sort of university lecturer. You're a genius, really. Um, but an intelligence of, yeah, see, I can butter you up as well, but an intelligence of maybe a 3 or 5 isn't that of an animal or an ooze. It's kind of that of someone who is ill educated. um, so it doesn't mean that you go, well, my character's got an intelligence of 5, I'm not going to run away from the huge monster that is about to eat me, because I don't understand, or look, there's like an obvious danger with fire there. I'm going to stick my hand into it because I've got an intelligence of 5. It doesn't work that way. If you as a player can kind of understand that, well, it would be very stupid for me to do that. You don't do it. The stats are there for you to make stressed rolls. So if you are being chased, for instance, and it's a stress situation and you don't have time to rationalize or think, that is when you make those ability rolls, not when you've actually got time to process the information and try and do the right thing. So you don't fail rolls. You don't even need to make rolls for non-stress situations most of the time. If you say, I'm going to creep down this corridor, you don't go, right, I need to make a stealth roll every 6 seconds. You go, well, no one can see you. No one's aware of you. You move down the corridor quietly. If you're checking for traps, you don't make perception rolls every 6 seconds or investigation rolls. You are carefully moving down. And what the GM will probably say, or really what you should be saying as a character is, this is how I'm checking for traps. I'm going to kind of move cautiously down. I've got my pole. I'm going to quietly tap each tile. I'm looking for any kind of strange discrepancies. And you as a character describe the process of what you're doing. And the GM goes, excellent. You found a trap. No roll needed because your character is looking for those kind of things. Um, and sort of finally, when you enter a room, a GM will give you a description of a room. It seems to be some kind of study, heavily carpeted. There's a nice oak desk. There are a couple of candelabras, but they are not lit. But you can see across there's a bookshelf, and there's a large number of books that seem to be very ordered. Instead of going, can I make a perception roll or investigation roll? The player then goes, well, that sounds interesting. I want to check the chandeliers. I want to see if moving them would reveal a secret door. And that is the way that it sort of works, with a much more descriptive players taking a proactive role of saying what their characters are doing. And if they get it right, they don't need to make the checks for it. And I think that is, I would say, refreshing, but it is the old school style of doing things, and it does lead to that. And it's a common saying amongst GMs. Oh, they came up with an idea that was better than mine, so I went with it. Because the players, rather than going, oh, I want to make an investigation roll, that they're actually describing things. Wow, that's cool. Yeah, we'll have that happen, and that really promotes cooperative storytelling. Um, so
I think
yeah,
that's one of the sort of curses of fifth edition is that people sort of go in and say, I want to search the room, I'll make an investigation check, which is rude because you ask your GM and they tell you what to do,
yeah, yeah,
rather than just saying I'll roll it. But people are so used to it.
yeah, yeah,
And I really like the idea of, well, okay, how are you going to search the room? Well, I'm going to go up to the bookcase and light my cigar and get the smoke out and see if any of it is drawn in past
yeah,
any. That's so much better
yeah, yeah. No,
than,
it's beautiful.
even if you described it as you feel a slight brush, you've got that distance where, yeah, I use my mechanical thing, which is rolling a dice,
Yeah,
and then a thing happens, as opposed to, no, I'm going to, like you said, lift the candelabras up and
yeah,
see if they work,
yeah,
as opposed to discovering that was the way to do it. But you've got that distance that you only discovered it because you happened to roll a dice and it happened to roll high,
yeah,
as opposed to you having the agency of going, no, I want to do that. And yeah, that worked, and you did that. That
yeah,
wasn't random. Your actions did that.
yeah,
Just like if you're looking for traps and it's okay, you're tapping with someone, well, you found a trap,
yeah,
set it off. Because
yeah,
that's how tapping with a 10-foot stick works. You
yeah,
set it
yeah.
off 10 foot away. The
Um,
burst area is 20 foot's a bad luck, but it did the job that you wanted it to do. Get a
yeah,
longer stick next time.
yeah. No, no, absolutely. And I think a lot of people are who are used to more sort of battle-based sort of games are sort of concerned that it just looks like really deadly and it just looks like it's a meat grinder. They have produced, and I did a little video on this a while ago, sort of, you know, alternate rules. There are a lot of sort of luck points, so you can re-roll fails if you're in combat. You can even make the GM sort of re-roll. So there's a lot of flexibility if you want to give it sort of different feels, and that is everything from making it even more deadly to substantially less deadly in combat. But again, the gist of it is it's not designed as a combat game. You can fight in it, absolutely. There are rules for combat, but that is not the idea. Is to try and avoid, to try and sort of negotiate, to try and trick, to find additional resources that you can use to bypass traps and everything else. Um,
It
so
sounds like a very cinematic game in
I
as much as all the sort of things I'm thinking of for this type of sort of movies, putting John Wick to one side, um, because that's got its own type of magic realism with ballistic armor and stuff. But Indiana Jones, he does all these things.
yeah
He's very lucky. He makes good, not dexterity, but if he shot, he shot. That's it.
yeah
He's probably only got one hit point, if you like. In
yeah
real life, if someone lands a palpable hit, that's it.
yeah.
It's not like, oh, I've lost 10 hit points and I've got 80 left. It's someone has hit as hard as they can with a sword or with a gun or knifed you. That's pretty much it, unless you're very lucky.
Uh,
There's
uh,
lots of things you can do to avoid that.
yeah.
And I think that's rather than being, oh, this is a meat grinder, it's a cinematic game. Indiana Jones is regularly taken down,
Yeah.
and then it's how do they get out of it?
And I mean, speaking about that, I've seen the trailer for the next one, which I think was released last weekend, and it looks better than the Crystal Skulls.
I was going to say his face looks better when he's on the horse
Yeah,
because that first trailer was Uncanny Valley
yeah.
on one of them. No, it looks good.
I genuinely are excited for that. Um, yeah, I mean, Elsa has said it sounds good. I hate when I find myself kind of using the system over role play. I need to play Shadow Dark. You win, Andy. Well, thank you, thank you. As a disclaimer, this is how I'm planning to run it. You know, if you go to a convention and jump into someone's Shadow Dark game, they might want to do it as a meat grinder because it can be used like that. Um, and I'm sure some people have brought it for that purpose to have that kind of flavour of game because that's the way that they have fun, and it's a way some players like to go down dangerous dungeons, and not all of them come back. Um, but the system, I think, is very concisely written. I think they've done a tremendous job with community, and this is only in the quick start rules. I've not seen the core rulebook. I'm waiting for my Kickstarter book to come through. Um, um, but because it's rules light, because they're very open to you can run it however you want. They are not saying even in their quick start rules you must run it like this, you must run it as a meat grinder. um, it's easily convertible to other things, and I don't mean by changing the rules, I just mean by like reskinning. For instance, torches I've now made for junkers flares. The lanterns are flashlights, crowbars are door jacks. So it's gems are scav tech. It's exactly mechanically the
Yeah.
same, but it's just renamed. I think short bows are pistols, long bows are rifles, crossbows are shotguns. It's. I haven't rewritten the game. I've just gave the gear, um, different names basically for tomorrow's night's game. I genuinely, I'm very excited for it. I hope it does work. Um, there is going to be a degree of horror. The other thing that I like about it is the timing mechanic, um, and I kind of like it not because of the threat. Well, it's not that I want the players to be plunged into darkness and unable to do things and die horribly. What I like is that fear of that happening to them means that there's a pace to the game as well. Um, Now, I like my role playing, but you can create areas where they are not reliant upon light to do the role playing in. But once they're on the job, I mean, when you go down a dark dungeon to kind of rob some kind of monster, that's not the time to have a little bit of a tea party and a sit down. I know it happens in collateral damage all the time, but realistically, that's not the time that you're doing your socializing. It should be, this is a dangerous place. Let's get in and get out as fast as we can. And the game promotes that movement of let's get this done, because the things down here can see in the dark, we can't. If we lose our light, we're probably all dead. As Hicks, was it Hicks? It probably was Hudson would say, "Game over, man, game over." And I like it for that reason rather than for it feeling punitive to the players, um, because it gives a nice pace to that segment of the role play that should have a degree of pace. I hope I have articulated that well.
Yeah, because then the points at which they can open up and role play a bit or whatever feels more like relief.
Yeah,
It
yeah,
is those. It's rather than it being there's no real difference between this apart from we're rolling dice more in this one, or about the same if it's rollers. But even just your description of the changes you made to the tech and the items takes us all the way back to how you make a game world
yeah,
feel that way. This is the same system, but just by renaming a crowbar, it's automatically giving that sort of feel. My vision of what you were describing changed into something far more sort of science fictiony just by playing into the fact that we're hardwired to have images from certain descriptions because we've all seen lots of media.
yeah, yeah. No, no, absolutely. And I mean, I tried to replicate the aliens feel there. Hopefully, it's kind of gave you a little bit of a visual for the aliens. I don't know. I'm learning graphic design as I go, just as I'm learning tech and everything out. Elsa has also said it's got the flea black lady in. I'm assuming you mean the Indiana Jones movie. Yeah, she's amazing. She's very very talented, and Elsa is also excited. I'm assuming about the indie movie, or just excited in general, which is a good thing to be.
For a
Um,
Friday, let's be honest.
for a Friday, yeah. I mean, I do know it's like 27 minutes past 7 at the moment, but if we were playing collateral damage, let's face it, not a lot would have happened as yet. Things start
We
getting. Sorry.
might have moved a distance, maybe.
Yeah, no, it's such a Friday night chilled game. It's very very awesome. um, in fact, coming back to Kara's thing, were you meant to start a game at 7? Possibly, but they probably haven't even noticed I'm not there yet. Um,
What I'll do is next Friday at 7:28, I will make a note of what we've actually got to and report back,
yeah, yeah.
just so you can get an accurate pacing style for our particular type of game. But yeah, I don't think Andy's far off. We might have actually decided
And
whose go it was.
it's not a criticism in any way. I do not like player paralysis. The reason why collateral damage take their time is because they're enjoying the banter of the role play, both in and out of character. And it's a delight. I mean, it's 18th level, 5th edition, and I think it's our longest. It must be Twisted Narratives now, longest existing campaign, or certainly the campaign that has had the most sessions, because it's a weekly game. So, sorry, you're going to say something there, Michael?
No, just agreeing with you.
Yeah,
But yeah, it's weekly game, and it must be the longest one by now.
yeah. It's certainly the highest level game. Although it might be quite interesting to see the icebreakers versus collateral damage.
I'm not
Because
saying that I've run things in my head against certain characters versus certain characters.
but
Yeah, it'd be
I
interesting.
I mean, collateral icebreakers are only 12th level, but they are over geared deliberately, I would say. Again,
If you
not
want our wizard to explode in envy, got this stuff at 12th.
yes, I
What do you
know
mean you've
it's
got this stuff at 12th?
absolutely. So yeah, I mean uh, I'm a big fan of my comic books, and I've always liked my X-Men versus Avengers, and then they have to get together to defeat, I don't know, uh, God Doom or whatever. Um, but I could see that. I mean, it's problematic for you, I think, Michael, more than anything else, because you've got characters in both games. Um, but that, I mean, who knows? Maybe that needs to be our first Chimera Con, Twisted Narrative Con sort of set piece. Uh,
Oh God, we've got two bards who like playing Wonderwall. Oh no, Andy, no.
yeah, it's almost like the fates come together.
Oh,
Uh, yeah, I know. The question is, would Fen be jealous of Ace, or would they get on?
I think they'd get on. I think Stuart would roll a wisdom roll, and then any sort of jealousy would bypass entirely,
Yeah,
and probably get on quite well with with Ace. Invite him back.
yeah. Yep, absolutely. Skill said, yep, you are 10th level, but you think it's more likely kill each other first. And I mean, I've mentioned this numerous times, Skill, um, about your game, just so we know. We'll take Junkers is on tomorrow night, hopefully live 7:30. Please come along and watch live if you can. If not, watch it on a recap on video on demand, because I very much want you to watch. And don't forget to subscribe to this YouTube channel. I'm sure that everybody in chat has already done that. Really appreciate that. What I'm trying to do is find your game. That is what I'm trying to do, Skill. Let us see if we can do that. We've got all sorts of um, things that I need to do here. I'm trying to find your game because I do have it down here. It'd be Saturday's game, wouldn't it? That is this week's. That is that. So, um, Skill plays in Greyhawk Unbound, and it is John and Wayne, Simon and Al that plays in that game. And I've mentioned it quite a few times that this game, above all the games that I run, has quite possibly the most old school kind of feel to it. And I don't mean that in any kind of negative way. I mean, we have a lot of fun and banter with collateral damage. Um, um, but Greyhawk, it just feels it's still a ticketed game, it's still a paid game, but it literally feels like a group of teenagers around the table. And I know that it's going to sound strange to you, Michael, because collateral damage sometimes feels like a group of teenagers, but there are one or two individuals that are herding said teenagers around. Um, uh, Greyhawk is just an amazingly fun game where um, I mean there is plot. I try hard to make plot, but the fun of it is that I could literally just do lots of random encounter tables, and the players would be equally as happy. I know that certainly Skill and Wayne are old school players. I think Skill Gannon, you are very much a second edition fan of Dungeons and Dragons, and I kind of try and bring a small amount of that feel to that game. Um, and it's genuinely a pleasure to run. I do it. Skill says really enjoying it as well. It's larger than life, but not super powered. I mean, a couple of the characters are definitely min-maxed and definitely optimized, but that just adds more to the fun of it. Um, um, Skill says, lol, and the hot chocolate, yeah. They're still suspicious of a bed and breakfast gnome that gives them the most remarkable hot chocolate as they stay at her guest house. They are super suspicious, but they keep going back there for the hot chocolate and accommodations, which is always good to see. Um, and Skill did confirm he loves second edition Dungeons and Dragons as well. I think you should maybe check out Shadow Dark because mechanically it's nothing like second edition, but I think feel it will feel very much like that old school style of play. Well, I feel that my money is on she's a witch, or maybe she's a gnome and likes making hot chocolate. She's done literally nothing to raise any kind of suspicions other than be nice.
That's highly suspicious.
Yeah,
Done nothing to raise any suspicion.
it is suspicious. Um, wow, this is the longest 6 o'clock club that we've had, mainly because I'm normally running a game at 7. Um, but I think we do need to sort of wind things up here now. Um, I've got a very busy day tomorrow. Saturday's games, 4 games. Let me see if I can call these up again. There you go. So we've got Curse of Strahd tomorrow with Josh, Ian, Matt, Pete, and Ryan. I think you all know that we are in our end game here. They're in Castle Ravenloft, and they're playing cat and mouse with Strad at the moment. And this is a reminder as well. If people are interested in playing Shadow Dark, I am thinking about starting a new Curse of Strahd campaign, but using Shadow Dark for it. Uh, so that is something to bear in mind at some point. But then after that, we've got Tomb of Annihilation, which is Casper, Gordon, Marcus, and Dave. They are basically in the final encounter of the entire campaign. So that game is coming to an end very soon as well. It might take only this session um, to die horribly or be victorious, or it might take a couple of more sessions. It's quite a complicated combat. Then we've got the Diplomates, which has got Ben, Charlotte, Mal, Doug, and Nathan in. And then tomorrow night at 7:30, rather than Call of Cthulhu, because we had to postpone it, we've got Junkers. So very excited about that. But it does mean I've got over 12 hours worth of gaming tomorrow, which I'm very excited about, but also could do with finalising some of these games. Um, So without further ado, I want to say a big thank you to you, Michael, for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure. We've managed to cover a whole host of topics, I think, and it's been super fun. So thank you very much.
Very much my second favourite thing to do on a Friday evening.
Yes, yeah, absolutely. And to everybody that stayed with us, we've had a great number of people in chat. You've all been very interactive tonight. It's been a pleasure seeing your comments. So thank you very much for staying with us. If you're watching on catch up as well, I hope you've made sense of all of the nonsense that we've been talking about. There will be a pre-record 6 o'clock club on Mondays because I've got a scheduled clash now, and that will be what's happening next week, maybe announcing any one shots or new campaigns or anything else. And then I'll be back on Tuesday with Christian for 6 o'clock club um, normally. No, I think Kyle, the first one is to play Collateral Damage, I'm guessing. But Michael has been known to have a drink whilst playing Collateral
Anyway,
Damage.
no time
I'm not
now.
going to say anything else.
Finishing now.
It's not my place to embarrass you here. So have best rest of evening, everybody. It's been an absolute blast and a pleasure. Hopefully, I'll catch you over the weekend. If not, um, maybe you'll watch on Monday, or I'll catch you on Tuesday. For now, take care, everybody. See you later. Bye for now.